it's going to be okay. Which is, well, it's a tough thing to say out loud convincingly at the moment with some of the challenges being faced in the world. Of course, a lot of this triggered by the war in Iran and the economic and political ripples that have gone from the Straits of Hormuz even as far south as us in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Joining me on the program now, a geopolitical expert who specialises in the Middle East and New Zealand's relationship with the Gulf states and other areas, Dr. Geoffrey Miller. Geoffrey, thank you for your time. Nice to chat again.
Good morning, Andrew. Good to be back.
An update on the situation. Now, things certainly started with a hiss and a roar, and last time we were talking, you were saying it depends on what happens when the rockets run out. No sign of that at this stage, Geoffrey.
Indeed, Andrew, and Iran has shown that it has incredible staying power, despite these absolute massive barrages of airstrikes. They've still continued to hold the ability to dispatch ballistic missiles and drones towards the Gulf states, towards Israel, and to do significant damage.
I wanted to talk about that
Oh,
actually because in
yeah.
previous years, when there's been attacks on Israel, the Iron Dome has just sort of locked into place. Nothing gets through, even though hundreds and hundreds of rockets are sent all at once. It seems that the Iron Dome not as impervious as it used to be, and in terms of air defence, even around US bases, there's definitely rockets getting through.
And that's been the surprising thing, Andrew, that so many targets have been hit by Iran. They've not just been able to send out these drones, they've been able to target them. They've been able to target oil facilities, airports, ports, refineries is the big one at the moment.
Yep.
Oil facilities have really, and gas facilities have really been the latest targets over the last week to 10 days. And it has been remarkable. It is true that Israel does have some very good air defense facilities, and no doubt they have intercepted a large number. But when
Yep.
it comes to just when you send just such volleys of ballistic missiles and drones, they can overwhelm the Iron Dome in Israel, and that has been what's happening. Typically, a lot have been intercepted, but some get through and
Yep.
some cause the damage. So it just goes to show really that despite the United States and Israel being some of the most advanced militaries in the world, they've been unable to stop attacks at quite strategic targets. I mean, US embassies have been attacked
Yep.
in Baghdad, for example, in Riyadh, and the weapons have done significant damage, the drones and the ballistic missiles. Just to name a couple of examples, the air bases, of course, the Al Udeid base in Qatar, bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, the UAE. I mean, in the base that New Zealand forces have actually been stationed at in the past
Yep.
was targeted in the UAE, and that was significantly damaged. So it has been quite remarkable. We're almost 3 weeks into the war, and Iran has shown no sign that it's giving up or that its
Yep.
ability to fight back is exhausted. It is weakened heavily.
Yep.
It's not sending out ballistic missiles and drones perhaps at the rate that it was in week one. But also, I think it's interesting that the missile and drone launches have actually gone up in the last week. So it actually shows that Iran has had some ability to regroup and retarget. So it is a complex picture.
Talking about targeting energy infrastructure in particular, because I mean this is the heartbeat of the Middle Eastern economy, to target energy infrastructure, the impact that has not just on the Middle East, but of course their trading partners as well. This seems to have been the focus in the last few days.
Indeed, and the big one yesterday was the fact that Israel targeted the South Pars gas field.
Hmm.
Now that is shared with Qatar. So the Iranian side is the South Pars field. Qatar calls it the North Field, but it's the biggest LNG, biggest natural gas reservoir really in the world.
Yeah.
And Israel targeted Iran first, and then Iran retaliated. Uh, Attacking Qatari facilities, the Ras Laffan facility. And Qatar has come out overnight and said that that has knocked out 17% of their LNG, that's liquefied natural gas capacity. It's caused an average or an estimated 20 billion US dollar loss in
Wow.
annual revenue. That's about 9% of Qatar's GDP every year. And for the next 3 to 5 years, he's been knocked out by one strike.
Yeah.
And that has, of course, had knock-on ramifications for gas prices globally. In Europe, gas prices went up 25 to 30% off the back
Wow.
of this strike alone.
Mm.
And this is just one of the strikes against oil and gas facilities that we've seen over the past few days. It is very, very concerning.
And this just within the last 24 hours, there's some dispute over, I mean, it was an Israeli attack, how much the US knew about it, whether or not that was sanctioned by the US. There's some complications, as you say. In the fog of war, we may not really know the answer to who knew what and who approved it. All this in the context, though, of, okay, yes, that is impacting oil and gas infrastructure, but with the Straits of Hormuz remaining closed, this may be a bit of a moot point, actually, because nothing's leaving the area. Talk to us about this, very predictable response from Iran that when attacked, the Straits of Hormuz have been closed. This is a huge strategic advantage that Iran has due to the geography, and it perhaps could have been anticipated a bit more accurately by the Americans and the Israelis before the attack.
Indeed, I mean, analysts like myself for years have been pointing this out, that this was the most likely move. That this was not some, unforeseen consequence of an all-out war between Iran and Israel and the United States.
Yeah.
If anything, this was the most likely consequence, and it seems perhaps remarkable that it just hasn't happened to this extent before in recent years.
Yep.
I mean, Iran could have done this last year during the 12-day war. That was back in last June 2025. Instead, it decided, look, we don't want to escalate this further. We are going to do a single performative strike, which they did against the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. But look, the Strait of Hormuz, just to recap, it's the very narrow waterway, very narrow corridor that links the Gulf, the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, depending on which side of the fence you stand,
Yep.
and the Gulf of Oman. And it's only 33 kilometers at its narrowest point. The
Wow.
shipping lanes are much narrower still. And through that waterway, 20 million barrels of oil flow through every day in
Wow.
normal circumstances, or around 20% of the world's supply. So this is the situation we're in, where this corridor is a war zone, and no one wants to transit a war zone when you're going to be a sitting duck for drones and missiles, and a number of tankers have been hit in this war to send a message from Iran.
I wanted to get
So
your perspective.
there's a closure.
Yeah, no, I just want to get your perspective on that, because yes, there's it's within drone range, of course. I mean, you can almost throw a rock at boats as they go through the Strait of Hormuz, but also, of course, mines in the area. But I also wanted to get your perspective on the influence of insurance companies, because even if militarily they were able to clear the straits, Lloyd's Bank and others, who are the major insurers of just about everything that floats around the world, they have said, hey, if you're sailing through here, you're not insured, regardless of drones or mines. Nobody's going to take the risk of sailing those waters anyway.
That's right. And as I said, no one wants to go into a war zone, and no one is going to be insured to go into a war zone. I mean, it's just the same principle. If you want to go to the Middle East right now, you can't get travel insurance.
Yeah.
Travel insurers will say, good luck, because it's just a risk that is uninsurable war. So it's the same principle there for shipping. And insurers are just not going to insure ships to go through the Strait of Hormuz at the moment. And that was why Donald Trump was trying earlier in the week, saying, well, we're going to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz, and we're going to get our allies to come and do the work for us or with us. And he called out the likes of the United Kingdom, Japan, and Australia, and so on, to go and do the work. Also notably China, which isn't a US ally.
Yep.
It was on the list. And then one by one, all of these countries said, "Oh, well, actually, Mr. President, it's not our war,
Yeah,
and actually, we can't at the moment. Sorry." And then Trump, in his usual way, said, "Oh, well, we don't need you anyway."
yeah,
But he's still left in the position that even the US Navy can't really do this job
yeah.
because it's an active war zone, and they would require so many ships and assets to even try this operation, and they would be sitting ducks.
And I suppose the point that I'm wanting to make, even if this could be done militarily, which is a huge question mark, is it uh, is it the war which is blocking the Straits of Hormuz, or is it actually something which is happening with Lloyd's of London and the insurance risk? Even if it was clear militarily, unless the actuary tables say yes, we're happy to insure this, is it the insurance company that is blocking the strait rather than armed forces?
Well, I think everything is linked together at the end of the day here, Andrew. I mean, if there was a ceasefire in place, uh, no doubt the risk would become more
Okay.
calculable for the insurance industry, and they'd be willing to offer insurance. There would be an elevated risk, sure. There probably always is in that part of the world, but that is always priced into insurance. But right now, I mean, when it's an open war zone, when there are hundreds of missiles and
Yeah.
drones flying across that strait every day, would you offer insurance? Probably not.
Yeah.
If you're an insurance company, you'd say this risk is just far too high. We just cannot offer insurance. So then it comes down to states and what do they do? The United States military, could it do the job? The issue is that they don't really have enough ships
Hmm.
to do it, and not the right kinds of ships. And still, you've got the issue that, as we've seen and as we've talked about, even with all the air defense capabilities in the world, you get missiles and drones that break through.
Yeah.
And I just can't think of anything better that Iran would like right now than to hit some US Navy ships
Yeah.
going through the Strait of Hormuz, trying to escort commercial tankers. I just think it's just not practicable, and it's just not going to happen, I think.
And none of the allies or even trading partners are volunteering to be involved with this as well. Just finally on this, looking at the end game, now we are, as you say, nearly 3 weeks in. At one point, Donald Trump says, oh, this will be 4 or 5 weeks, so we may be over the halfway mark, although, honestly, it looks like it's escalating, if anything. But what would the end game look like? What circumstances would need to change for this war to draw to a conclusion, in your opinion, Jeffrey?
Look, both sides, I think, are very much still in maximizing positions, both Iran and the United States. I just don't see any appetite at this moment as we speak for a ceasefire. Things could always change very quickly,
Yep.
but I was just having a look at the poly market, prediction market. This is a market where you can put your own money and bet on what's going to happen. And it's been known to be used by insiders at the Donald Trump administration. And the odds have just been going down all week in terms of predictions when this war will end. We're now at only 4% think the war will be ending by the end of the month. Well, there's
Hmm.
only 10 days left in March. I guess that's predictable.
Yep.
But now only 34% think the war will end by the end of April. And even if you go to the end of June, it's gone down to only 2/3 think
Wow.
the war will be over by the end of June. And the fact is that Donald Trump is now, or the Pentagon is now seeking $200 billion US dollars in funding for a war that is costing around 12 billion US a week,
Yep.
tells you that we're in potentially for the long haul, for a long war. It's quite scary when you think of the ramifications of all of that. And just lastly, Andrew, I just think it's really important to remember the human cost and the
Yeah.
human toll of this war. We can talk a lot about the economic cost here, but we're at around 1,500 killed in Iran. I think that number's probably an undercount. 1,000 killed in Lebanon, which we haven't even really touched
Yeah.
on today, just because there's so much going on. And then smaller numbers throughout the rest of the region. 18 killed in Israel, around 21 or so in the Gulf states, 61 in Iraq. And thousands and thousands and thousands of injuries.
Yeah.
It's horrific. It's happened all just in 3 weeks, and it could get so much worse.
Yes, thank you for that, Jeffrey. Important to put this in a human context in amongst the geopolitics. Certainly, there's no sign of a popular uprising happening in Iran or the regular army changing sides against the Iranian Guard. and certainly it looks like we're not going to have a boots on the ground scenario. But how long this will continue, and the continued impact that this will have, not just on economies and geopolitics, but on human lives as well. Well, hey, honestly, anyone's guess at this point.